A very good evening to everyone. I'm Joyda. Welcome to the third installment of this series named Empowerment for Effective Self-Care. Tonight's topic is on self-compassion. These training sessions are organized by Sower Institute for Biblical Discipleship in partnership with Care Corner and supported by Evangelical Alliance of Singapore and Hope Initiative Alliance. During the sessions, you will hear from our experienced counselors from Care Corner as they share and discuss with you more about mental health topics. For tonight's session, you will get to hear from Madam Fion Liew. We will also have a short Q&A segment with Fion, facilitated by Miss Carolyn, who is the speaker for our fourth session of this series. Opening this session, we have Reverend Ezekiel, General Secretary for Bible Society of Singapore, to say a few words for your participation in this mental wellness program. Thereafter, we will watch a short sharing from Reverend Dr. Roger Ng, Pastor of Grace Bible Fellowship, in the topic of self-compassion and the Bible. Thank you.
On behalf of the Bible Society of Singapore and all our partners, good evening to one and all. Thank you for joining us today for a session on empowerment for effective self-care. It is really heartening to see so many Singaporeans and even friends from overseas joining us for this session. A warm welcome to all of you. Today we are living in a world of uncertainty. COVID-19 has changed the way many of us go about our life, regardless if it is in the area of our work, our family, and even how we spend our personal time. While the changes may be just something new for us, there are some who have been impacted greatly by it. The loss of job security, the time that is spent at work working, secluded from others, has had a toll on some. Also, some marriages have been adversely affected. While some are living in fear at home, being abused yet not being heard or seen. Hence, it is in these times that there's a need for more to know about how they can take care of their mental health and how they can identify others who may be under a lot of stress and anxiety as well. The Bible Society of Singapore, with our partners, came up with this program, Empowerment for Effective Self-Care, in hopes to be a light to people who may actually need these resources, but do not know who they can approach for help. Topics such as understanding and managing anxiety and how we can embrace ourselves and others with kindness in the midst of challenges will be shared by our experienced speakers in their respective sessions. I believe that when Jesus calls us to be salt of the earth and light of the world, he wants us to be the one championing causes that aid people who are in need, not just monetarily or mentally, but in all aspects of life. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our various partners in the mental wellness series, such as Care Corner, the Evangelical Alliance of Singapore, and Hope Initiative Alliance, who have chosen to come alongside us to organize this series of talks. It is truly our privilege and honor to have with us speakers who are experienced counselors from Care Corner to share with us more about mental wellness. May all of you be empowered through our series of talk, and may we all enjoy greater intimacy in our relationships with God, with the people around us, and even with ourselves. Thank you. God bless.
I would like to express my appreciation to Singapore Bible Society for conducting these classes on mental health. My topic today is self-compassion and the Bible. Singapore Institute of Mental Health, in their website, say this: there's no health without mental health. They say 1 in 8 persons in Singapore will experience some kind of mental disorder in their lifetime. After COVID-19, mental health become more important, more apparent. President Halimah Yacob highlighted this need a number of times over the past 2 years. Psychology in the past focused on negatives such as depression, anxiety, fear, abusers, OCD, schizophrenia, etc. By recent years, Dr. Martin Seligman, professor of University of Pennsylvania, has successfully shifted the focus to positive psychology, to mental well-being, such as how to be happy, how to be resilient, and how to be mindfulness, how to practice mindfulness. Therefore, the study of happiness, well-being, gratitude, compassion become the tops of the day. Self-compassion is one of such effort. In fact, it was introduced by Dr. Christine Neff. She researched this topic when she was doing her doctoral work in UC Berkeley. Dr. Christine Neff said in her website that having compassion for oneself is really no different from having compassion for others. Think about how you feel about compassion. It is the same. Compassion involves feeling moved by others' suffering so that your heart responds to their pain. In fact, compassion is a common topic in the Bible, especially compassion of God. In the Bible, in the New Testament, the Greek words splanizomai, elios, itero, all these are words describe kindness or concern expressed for someone in need. Mercy, compassion, pity, sympathy, and so on. For example, in Psalm 103, verse 8, the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in love. Merciful, the word raham in the Hebrew, is the same word is used in verse 13. As a father showed compassion to his children, so the Lord showed compassion to those who fear him. So the Lord is full of compassion. Romans 9:15 say the same thing. I have mercy on whom I have mercy. I have compassion on whom I have compassion. So if the word mercy and compassion are interchangeable. When Jesus came out to see the crowd, Matthew 9:36, he had compassion for them because they are like sheep without shepherd. Matthew 14:14. When Jesus went ashore, he saw a great crowd and he had compassion on them and healed them. 2 Samuel 24:14. Then David said to the Lord, let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercy is great. So you see, God is God of mercy, God of compassion. In fact, the gospel is full of compassion. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4. But God, being rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, when we are in trouble, we are in sin, we can not help ourselves, he made us alive. That is God's compassion on us. By grace you have been saved and raised up with him and seated with him in heavenly places in Jesus Christ. The gospel or the good news of God is even when we are in trouble, when we are in sin, when we have no way of saving ourselves, God has mercy and compassion on us by sending his own son to die on the cross in order to save us from the punishment and hell. This is God's compassion. Sometimes we are in deep trouble, in dark places, and sometimes no one understands us, no one knows, no one cares. But let me tell you, God knows, God cares, and God has already prepared a way to help you and me. By sending his own son, he prepared a way to help us. But you need to turn to him. You need to pray to him. You need to ask him for help. You need to confess your sin, and he will forgive you. And he will save us beyond our imagination. Titus 3:5 says this, God saved us not because of our works done in righteousness, but according to his own mercy, according to his own compassion. So you see, God is a God of compassion. God wants to save us. God wants to have compassion on us. So let us turn to him. So Christian, after being saved by God, being shown mercy and experience God's compassion, we need to show compassion to others. Matthew 5:7 say, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." And Matthew 9:13 say this, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but the sinners." So all of us, when we are in trouble, when we are sinners, when we cannot save ourselves, let us come to God. Let me return to the topic of the day, self-compassion. I must give credit where credit is due. Self-compassion is developed by Christine Neff. And in her own website, Dr. Christine Neff said this, self-compassion is the central construct of Buddhism. And she has been practicing Buddhist meditation ever since her university day. And in fact, all the website, if you type self-compassion, they will tell you, they will quote Buddha, they will quote Dalai Lama, they will quote all the teaching from Buddhism. So this is something that you need to take note of. Let me say something about the benefit of practicing self-compassion as they propose. Self-compassion teaches to be kind instead of to be judgmental on our own failure. We need to be, since we recognize that we are imperfect, we are failing, we are difficult, there are so many difficulties in life, and difficulties in life is inevitable, so let us be gentle with ourselves. In fact, people, if you understand Buddhism, you understand this. People always cannot get what they want, so they'll say, let's accept this as reality with sympathy and kindness. In Mandarin, we call this 随缘, because as you go, 随遇, 随意, it's all this like, this is nature of life, just accept it. So this is what they are teaching. Self-compassion teaches us to be kind to ourselves. Again, secondly, self-compassion teaches us that failure are okay. Since we are all human, we fail. It's okay. This is a common experience. So we shouldn't feel bad about this. And thirdly, self-compassion teaches that we should allow ourselves to feel bad. But don't let the negative emotion overtake us. So mindfulness, practicing of mindfulness is non-judgmental, a receptive mindset, which one observe our own thoughts, our own feelings, as they are without trying to suppress or deny them. Mindfulness requires that we are not to be over-identified with our own thoughts and feelings, so that we are not caught up and swept away by them. So mindfulness or self-compassion mindfulness means that we accept our humanness. So this is what self-compassion is about. Let me give you a few pointers, some pointers about what Christians should be concerned about. Of course, we can learn many things from all kinds of studies and all kinds of people. Dr. Christine Neff said in her own website, self-compassion is a Buddhism major construct. So you must know that. So my question is this, to you who are Christian. Are we to seek compassion for ourselves? Are we to seek compassion from ourselves or from God? Is this approach draw people away from Christ or draw people toward Christ? Is this approach drive people to the Word of God or drive people away from the Word of God, which is the Bible? Are we to accept the will of God or accept things as it is? Are we to be holy as the Father is holy, like 1 Peter 1:15? Or we just accept our humanness? Are we to accept our humanness or are we to change into Christ's image? As you study this, we have to keep this in mind. That we can learn from anything, but let us be discerning. Let's look at one verse before I conclude. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things built up. So let us study carefully, pick whatever you think is good, but let's discerning what is biblical and what is not. So enjoy your study. May God bless you.
Our speaker for tonight is Madam Fion Liew. Fion is a professional counselor with more than 10 years of experience in the social service sector. And she has worked with a diverse range of clients, including individuals with special needs, emotional distress, and underprivileged families. Her work focuses on helping individuals build a healthy self-relationship that recognizes one's own strengths while also embracing one's imperfections. Facilitating the Q&A after Fion's sharing is Miss Carolyn Liew. Carolyn is also a professional counselor from Care Corner. So a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for Fion, you may type them in the chat box at any time during the session. Let us now hear from Fion on the topic of self-compassion.
Hi, good evening. I'm Fion. I'm the counselor from Care Corner Counselling Center. And we are very honored to be invited by Singapore Bible Society to kind of like share different methods to all of you on how you can take care of yourself mentally. So this series actually started with my colleague, Yvonne, started talking about different types of anxiety. As we know that anxiety is often a symptoms to different kind of mental disorder. And following that, my colleague Lily, she spoke about emotional regulation and highlighting how being with our emotions can give us a valuable information about ourselves. And if we can sit with the discomfort, which is our unpleasant feelings, we are less likely to react negatively and better able to respond constructively to the situations. So today, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into our relationship with ourselves because it affects about how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And the better relationship that we have with ourselves, the more resilient we can be in dealing with our life challenges. So at the end of this talk, we will achieve three things. What is self-compassion? And second, you will gain some insights into how compassionate or not you are towards yourself. And lastly, you will learn how you can better love and be kind to yourself and practice this in your daily life. This is my family photo taken at Changi Jurassic Park. In this photo, we are a happy family, quite typical of photos you see on Facebook or Instagram. My friends who know me would often say, "Aya, you got nothing to worry about one lah, as I'm doing well in my job, have no need to worry about money, and two lovely children at home. I seems to have a perfect family, perfect life in their eyes. Furthermore, as a counselor, I should be well equipped to deal with the turbulence of life. Of course, like everyone, I have many happy moments in life and many things I'm thankful for. But that's not how I really feel most of the time. Rather, this is what I really feel most of the time. Stress. Often, I feel pulled by different roles that I play. Being a mother, a wife, a daughter-in-law, an employee, as well as a therapist. Not long ago, I was a student too. Every role has its own responsibilities and expectations. Every role demands of my time, energy, and mental space. Some of you have even more responsibilities like being a caregiver to take care of someone who is sick. This sounds daunting, isn't it? There are challenges in every season of life. Youth worry about their studies and social acceptance. Adults are concerned about their work performance and courtship. Couples worry about their finances, their children, and even their parents. The elderly worry about their health and loneliness. No one is spared. In dealing with these many challenges, setbacks are inevitable. Sometimes we just did not perform as well as we should. There are positive and negative ways to deal with setbacks. Let me start with the negative. One morning, I met a client who was highly suicidal. The session was very intense, and at the end, I was emotionally drained. But I had 2 more sessions to come. I wasn't able to focus and listen well to my second and third clients. I was of not help to them. I have been in the helping profession for more than 10 years. I'm used to seeing 3 or 4 clients a day. So even though the first session was difficult, there was not excuse for my performance. I felt really bad and lousy at the end of the day. I didn't like this lousy feeling. So I started looking for reasons to explain my poor performance. Maybe I was distracted by the ache in my body. Maybe that ache portends something more serious that is affecting my brain. Maybe I had cancer. If it is not my health, maybe I'm just not a very good counselor. If I could not deal with such situations, perhaps I should not be a counselor. Did you notice that my thoughts shift from I feel bad, I don't like this feeling, to I don't want this feeling, to I shouldn't have this feeling, to something is wrong with me, to I'm bad? All this happened in the blink of an eye. Do you have the similar experiences like me before? Yeah, the negative little voices are like little hammers beating us down. They leave us feeling stuck, depressed, and anxious. And there is a better way to respond to setbacks. Do you find that it is easier to be compassionate and gracious to your friends than to yourself? Yeah, I understand it. Because being kind to ourselves is like a foreign language to many of us, especially in an Asian culture. Asian parents often say, 打是疼，骂是爱. We hit you because we care for you. We scold you because we love you. Hence, we grow up thinking that the way to motivate ourselves is to be harsh towards ourselves. Tough love. Is that really true? Now, I would like to invite you to do a little experiment with me. Please hold your hand out and squeeze your fist and hold it tight until I ask you to release. What emotions are arising from this gesture? Tension, stress, discomfort, or anger? Yeah, this is the typical mind state when we beat ourselves down with criticism and self-judgment. It doesn't feel good, does it? Now, open your palms and face them outward. What do you feel? What emotions arise? And how does this gesture feel differently from the last one? You may feel release, at ease, a sense of being open, at peace or acceptance. And this is a gesture of mindfulness. When we accept what is happening with open, spacious awareness. Now, extend your arm forward and imagine that you are holding a person in your arms. What emotions does this gesture evoke inside you? Is that a sense of embracing, connecting, or even reaching out? This is a feeling of common humanity when we go beyond our separate self and to include others. And now, place one palm in the other and slowly bring them both to the center of your chest. Feel the warmth and the gentle pressure of your hands on your chest. Breathe gently. What feelings are evoked within you? Do you feel safe, gentleness, peacefulness, or even love. And this gesture brings out self-kindness. It is like comforting ourselves when we need it. And this symbolic physical exercise shows us that being uptight makes us feel more tired and wear us down, whereas the gesture of common humanity and the self-kindness brings a sense of togetherness and comfort. This strengthens us to better withstand the challenges in life. Look at these photos. What feelings, thoughts comes to you? And what do you feel like doing for them? I believe that many of us feel sad and heartbroken for these children suffering in the war. They are deprived from even the most basic needs that we take for granted here, which is safety. They are so vulnerable and extremely helpless. Images like this spur us into actions. We want to do something to help these children, make their lives better. And all these responses are compassionate responses. We imagine ourselves in their shoes, felt for them, and understood their struggles. We responded not with judgment, but with empathy and care. Likewise, for self-compassion, we learn to attend to ourselves with empathy and care when we are struggling to meet our needs or to fulfill our desires, especially when we are feeling helpless towards our situations. And now you can take a piece of paper and write down your response on a paper. First, think about a time when a close friend felt really bad about him or herself. Perhaps from a failed exam, a breakout, a job loss, or an illness. What would you say to your friends? And what would be the tone of voice that you use to say to your friends? Please write down this and note the tone of your words. And now, imagine these same situations happen to you. How would you respond to yourself? Please write down what you say, and again, note the tone of your voice. Do you notice a difference between these two situations? So, what are self-compassions? Self-compassion comprises of these three elements: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness. Self-kindness is caring for ourselves as we care for others. When our friends and loved ones make a mistake, feel inadequate, or suffer some misfortune, we offer a hug or words of support and understanding to let them know we care. We may even reach out to help. When it comes to ourselves, we may be more judgmental. The common harsh words that I hear from my clients are, "I'm good for nothing," "I'm useless," or "I'm a failure." Or we may sometimes focus more on fixing the problem than on caring for ourselves. For example, "I need to work harder," "I don't deserve to rest since I'm not performing well at work." Or we just treat ourselves with cold stoicism. Just suck it up and move on. In fact, we are often tougher on ourselves than we are even with people we don't like very much. Therefore, there is a saying, we are our biggest enemy. So the self-kindness here means to put an end to our constant self-judgment and belittling of ourselves. It is not possible for us to silence our inner voices. What we can do is to change the tone of our inner dialogue to become more encouraging, kind, and caring, reflecting a friendlier and more supportive attitude towards ourselves. Through it, we begin to understand our weakness and failure. We begin to acknowledge our shortcomings while accepting ourselves unconditionally as flawed and imperfect human beings. And most importantly, we recognize the extent to which we have harmed ourselves through relentless self-criticisms. And now, we can mindfully choose another way to be kind to ourselves. Self-kindness is not just merely ending self-criticism. It is actively opening up our heart to ourselves, responding to our suffering without judgment. And we learn to soothe, comfort, and care for ourselves in the midst of emotional turmoil. We learn to nurture, like what we did in the exercise just now. We learn to let go and nurture ourselves when life is difficult. For example, may I allow myself to be emotionally moved by my own pain, pausing to say, this is really difficult right now. How can I care for myself in this moment? If I'm feeling threatened, how can I protect myself from harm? In my work with depressed and anxious clients, I notice many of them have very harsh voices towards themselves. Sometimes they are not even aware of it until I ask them to play out their self-dialogue, which is inside their head. When they become conscious of their critical voices, they are shocked to realize that they could be so mean towards themselves. So the exercise that we just did may give you some insights of how you have been relating to yourself. Besides that, these are also some of the signs that people are being too hard on themselves. As you pay deeper attention to all these examples, you may notice that these voices are often disguised as the voices of a well-meaning coach or protector. It wants us to do better, to improve, and even protect us from failure, setbacks, or shames. However, more often than not, this way of relating to ourselves will trap us into feeling bad about, less confident, more depressed, and anxious. And the second element of self-compassion is common humanity. And now it is a time to do finger exercise again. Please switch your view to the gallery view again. What do you notice from everybody's responses? I think many of you may feel normalized that you are not the only one suffering in this world. We could see that we are just like everyone else who experience ups and downs in life. This is part of being human. These are the common experiences that we all share. When we are critical towards ourselves, we tend to feel that we are the only one suffering in this world, especially when we see the many happy photos on Facebook or Instagram. We irrationally feel that everyone else is just fine, except me. We feel isolated and alone in our problems. Even when things happen that are beyond our control, we took the blame, as if we had signed a contract at birth that our life would be flawless. This sounds absurd, right? But many of us actually carry these beliefs subconsciously. In order to have compassion, we need to be willing to turn towards our pain, to acknowledge it with mindfulness. Mindfulness means being with your present moment, paying attention to your present thoughts and feeling, without judging it to be good or bad, without fighting or denying it, even it is negative thoughts and feeling. For example, I was aware that I felt lousy as a counselor when I couldn't listen well to my client's problem. I paid attention to the constricted and tense feeling in my body, especially the chest area, and I told myself that it was okay for me to feel what I felt, and I accepted this as part of my experience. And the lousy feelings eventually passed. Some of you may say that it is obvious that we are suffering, so we don't need to be mindfully aware of it. But it is not true, as our mind tends to focus on the failure, which is the event itself, rather than the pain, the experience of pain that caused by the failure. So, these three elements, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, are mutually reinforcing. For example, self-kindness lessens the negative emotional experiences and makes it easier for us to be mindful. Being mindful of one's feelings and thoughts help to lessen the self-judgment and provide insights we need to recognize our common humanity. So after talking about what self-compassion is, then what self-compassion is not? Self-compassion is not being self-pity. Self-pitying is you feeling sorry for yourself and complaining about others about the bad lucks. For example, "Aya, why I'm so poor things? This always happened to me." They exaggerate the extent of their problem and play the victim's role. Self-compassion makes us more willing to accept, experience, and acknowledge difficult feelings with kindness, which helps us to digest what happened to us and move on. People with self-compassion would say, "It is part of the puzzle of life to go through the challenges, and I'm not the only one facing such difficulties." This helps to put the situations into the perspective. Self-compassion is not being weak or cowardly or passive. If you are compassionate to yourself, you will allow yourself to be assertive, to stand against anything that may cause harm to you. Self-compassion is an important source of coping and resilience. Self-compassion is not being selfish. Think about the time that you felt beaten out by your self-criticism. Are you self-focused or other-focused in that moment? Do you have more or less capacity to care for others? I think most people would feel that they have little bandwidth left to care for others when they are absorbed in self-criticism. Quite the reverse. Being good to yourself actually gives you the emotional resources to be good to others too. Self-indulgence means allowing ourselves to have a short-term pleasure at the cost of the long-term harm. Let's imagine, would a compassionate mother give her daughter endless bowls of ice cream and let her skip school whenever the daughters want? Likewise, if you are kind to yourself, you will take good care of yourself. Whereas people who is harsh to themselves often resort to substances or unhealthy habits like binge eating to cope with their emotional distress. And self-compassion will not undermine motivations. Let's think for a moment how your boss or teacher could respond to your mistake. He might say, "You are so terrible. How could you make such a simple mistake?" Or he could say, "It is okay. We all make mistakes. Just needs to be careful next time." Which response would motivate you more? I believe many of us will say the second response. Sometimes, if we know that our failures will met with a barrage of self-criticisms, we may be too frightened to even try. This is why my clients often see themselves procrastinating, even they know that it is important to get the task complete. And I also have many clients who feel both exhausted and restless. So they feel that they are stuck in a pendulum swing in between working very hard and exhaustion. As we work through their internal critical voices, they often have this script: I feel that I'm not good enough, so I ask myself to work harder. When I feel tired, I feel that I shouldn't be resting as I haven't accomplished what I expect myself to do. So there is always a self-critic of not being good enough. All of us can be motivated, right? But the motivation behind self-criticism is fear, whereas the motivation behind the self-compassion is love and care. If we are kind to ourselves, we will say to ourselves that I want to improve and do better, so I work hard for it, but also take good care of my overall well-being. After sharing so much about self-compassion, how does self-compassion feel like? It is easy to say, but how do we actually do it? One easy way to care for and comfort yourself when you are feeling badly is to give yourself a supportive touch. Touch activates the care system and the parasympathetic nervous system to help us to calm down and feel safe. It may feel awkward or embarrassing at first, but you will get used to it eventually. It is similar to a baby responding to being cuddled in its mother's arm. Research indicates that physical touch releases oxytocin, provide a sense of security, soothe distressing emotions, and calms cardiovascular stress. So why not try it? And you can try this whenever you are going through difficult periods. And you can do this several times a day for a period of at least a week. So now let's practice it together. Just put your hands on your heart and just allow yourself to take 2 to 3 satisfying breaths. And gently place your hands over your heart, feeling the gentle pressure and warmth of your hand. If you wish, you can also place one hand or both hands on your chest. Just allow yourself to notice the difference between one or two hands. Feel the touch of your hand on your chest. And you could also make a small circle with your hand on your chest. Feel the natural rising and falling of your chest as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Linger with the feeling for as long as you like. And some people may feel uneasy by putting a hand over their heart. So just allow yourself to feel free to explore where you feel is most suiting for you. So some other possibilities are one hand on your cheek like this, creating your face in your hands. Gently stroke your arms, crossing your arms and giving a gentle squeeze. or even just gently rubbing your chest, or using a circular movement, or hands on your abdomen and one hand over your heart, or just both hands on your abdomens. So other than giving yourself a supportive touch, you can also allow yourself to have a self-compassion break. I will be switching off my video and audio, and let's allow ourselves to have a self-compassion break.
Welcome. My name is Christine Grace of Christine Grace and Community. It is my honor to offer you a mindful self-compassion practice. Self-compassion break. When you notice that you're feeling stress or emotional discomfort, see if you can find the discomfort in your body. Where do you feel it the most? Make contact with the sensations as they arise in your body. And say to yourself slowly, this is a moment of suffering. This noticing, this acknowledging is mindfulness. This is a moment of suffering. Or this hurts. This is so hard. This is difficult to bear. This is stressful. In whatever way best, with whatever words are best. This is a moment of suffering. Next, saying to yourself, suffering is a part of life. Suffering is part of living. Everyone has moments of suffering. That's common humanity. Other ways we might acknowledge this is, I'm not alone. Others are just like me. We all struggle in our lives. This is how it feels when a person struggles in this way. Suffering is a part of living. Now putting hand or hands over your heart or wherever it feels soothing on your body. Feeling the warmth and gentle touch of your hands. Saying to yourself, may I be kind to myself. See if you can find words for what you need in times like this. Other options may be, may I accept myself as I am. May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I learn to accept myself as I am. May I forgive myself. May I be strong. May I be safe. May I be kind to myself. If you're having difficulty finding the right words, imagine that a dear friend or loved one is having the same challenge as you. What would you say to this person? If your friend would leave with just a few words in mind, what would you like those words to be? What message would you like to deliver? Heart to heart. Now see if you can offer the same message to yourself. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of living. May I be kind to myself in this moment of suffering.
I wonder, how was the experiences like for you to embrace your own suffering? I hope this experience brings you some relief in the midst of your struggle. And you can start practice this whenever you need. And you can find the guided audio track from this website. You know, being a therapist, I've seen the power of self-compassion in my work. I use it very often with my clients who are either depressed or anxious. Many of my clients shed tears of joy when they first taste their self-love. That's how powerful it is. They describe it as a safe, warm feeling in their body, and they felt better after that when they allow themselves to love themselves, be kind to themselves, and be compassionate to themselves. So I hope that this exercise gave you a new good positive experiences of relating to yourself differently. And you will continue to apply it whenever you notice yourself feeling bad towards yourself. Thank you so much for listening and participating in this talk. I hope this talk has helped you become more aware of your relationship with yourself. And now you know, and you can be more loving and caring towards yourself. Thank you.
One of the questions asked was, what's the difference between self-compassion and selfishness?
Okay. So I think like quite often we brought out in the Asian culture that like we need to care for others, and we often being taught that like we should think about others, not so much of ourselves. So if we think for ourselves, then people will say that we are selfish, or sometimes our elderly or our parents will say that we are selfish. But if you could remember your past experience of taking flight to overseas, the safety briefing always tell us that take care of yourself first. If there is any emergency, wear the oxygen mask for yourself first before you go and save your children or your loved one. So I think being a therapist, as I myself also brought out in the Asian culture, I feel that it is important for us to love ourselves first. If we are not able to love ourselves and we are quick to criticize or blame ourselves, basically we just don't have that capacity to care for others. And I think likewise for Christian as well. Like I think quite often in in our relationship with God, we feel the love from Him. Therefore, we have the fuel to go and help others and take care of others. And I think the fact is like all of us I think we are all weak in certain sense, and we have very limited energy or capacity in many ways. So therefore, the more it is, we need to learn to love ourselves, because this is what God has loved us first. And even though we are not Christian, the more it is, we need to love ourselves first, because when we love ourselves, then we have more fuel, we have more capacity to love others and take care for others. And maybe just to add on a little, like because I see many client who is anxious and depressed, or if we are really do not allow ourselves to care for ourselves, and we often care for others first, the first things that happen is always burnout. And then I observe in my client, if this kind of like continue over a period of time, they will feel very depressed, because they will start to question that, hey, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? I live this life just to fulfill the dreams of my parents. I live this life just to please others people. They couldn't find a happiness, and they do not know what is really matters to them after all. Yeah.
Okay, so the Bible also says this, right? To love yourself as much as you love others. Right? The next question, what are the top 3 tips to practice self-compassion when caring for loved ones with mental health conditions?
Okay. If I imagine myself in a caregiver shoes, I'm not sure what kind of mental health condition, but I imagine that there must be a lot of frustration, because sometimes may be very hard to bring across a message or get the family members who have some mental health condition to do certain things. And I think another challenges will be caregiver guilt as well. Like you feel that you are not doing enough, or whenever you are frustrated, maybe you may accidentally kind of like lash out or say harsh word. But after you say harsh word, then you felt that like, oh, this is not acceptable. I should be loving as a mother. I should be loving as a brother, or things like that. So I think in self-compassion, we recognize that this kind of hiccup happens to everyone in my life, whether this is to mental health family members, or whether this is caring for my son as well. I do scold my son as well. Yeah. So I think in a situation as such, we also need to recognize that, like, yeah, the situation is really challenging for us. Therefore, we lose our temper, right? If the situation is good, then why would we lose our temper? It won't be possible, right? So if you start to recognize that, yeah, the situation is really tough for me, and I felt so stretched, I felt that I just don't have that capacity or the patience or the energy to carry on, therefore I lose temper, then may I be kind to myself. I don't blame myself for doing that. It was an unintentional actions. So when we start to recognize it and we start to be kind to our mistakes, and then perhaps we can recover faster and we will have more capacity to care.
Can we conclude that loving ourselves instead of being other-centered is not being self-centered?
That's right. That's right. So if we love ourselves, if we relate to ourselves in a loving and kind way, we tend to respond to others and interact with others with kindness as well. But if we are harsh towards ourselves, we tend to judge others as well.
Okay. Another question. For For someone who was an emotionally abused, who had emotionally abused childhood and subjected to a lot of blames and accusation, how to get out of this anxiety?
Okay. So, yeah, I think the later part of Q&A, I will also share about some of the signs or some of the situations that perhaps you may need to consider to seek professional help. Because I think some of us may come from, may have some relationship trauma when we were young, and people maybe said certain words that hurt us very deeply. So sometimes when you pay attention to your own feelings and the sadness and the anger, you felt that like the emotion just kind of like pull you into a vortex, and then it just goes spiral downwards. And then it gets really very scary, because the more you pay attention to your own experience and emotions, the more you feel depressed and the more you feel weighed down. So if this is some of the experience that you have experienced or your friends have experienced, perhaps it is important to seek professional help, because this is a sign of trauma as well. And if we are hurt in whether in a relational way or it was a accident or what, unexpected trauma, this wound needs to be healed. And yeah, you need to seek a professional help to kind of like work through this wound and process about it.
Okay. There's a talk next week also about anxiety and interpersonal relationships. So that will give you some tips for surface work. Yeah, but like what Fion said, if you want a full comprehensive recovery, you may need more professional help and support over a longer period of time. All right. There's another question. How does touching therapy help for hurt that is emotional? Does this work in our cultural setting?
I'm not sure this participant who asked about touch is what kind of touch, but generally in our counseling setting, we don't touch our client because we are very mindful that we are Asian culture, and we are not so open for touch. But I do have clients who is 12 years old girl. She was also experiencing a lot of bullying at school, and then she actually went for dog therapy. And what the therapist did was to just let her sit by the dog and then pet the dog. And then as she started to interact with the dog, and she see that the dog is so calm and so like the touching itself just soothed her a lot. So eventually this 12 years old girl start to open out, and then she's feeling safer to work through her issue. So I think the dog therapy actually give a sense not only about safety, it's also a sense of companion. So subsequently when she has a therapy counseling session with her therapist, the dog just sit next to her. So actually it also gave her a sense of support. So I'm not sure the touch therapy, which types of touch therapy that you are referring to. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Is this guided self-compassion meditation biblical? Yeah.
Okay, I need to think about this question, because as I hear this question, I'm also wondering like whether the Bible has talked about like guided meditation. But of course, like we all know that like being mindful, actually there is a lot of there is a root from Buddhism. So, but I think over the years, the science has also established the research to say that as we are being mindful and also being kind to ourselves, which is biblical, actually helps us to, it helps our neural network to helps to soothe us as well. So I couldn't really comment anything about whether it is biblical, but I personally believe that, like, you know, in Bible, there are so many verses that talk about God compassion. And just now the Reverend Dr. Roger also said that like mercy and compassion come together. And we all know that our God is a compassionate God and a merciful God, right? So recently, I have come across a verse that in the Bible, which is written in Colossians chapter 3, chapter 3, verse 12 to 14. As those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. So I think from the verse, God also encouraged us that to be compassionate, to be kind, and have a humility to others. And I truly believe that God wants us for ourselves as well. Therefore, He loves us and He gives us the mercy and grace. Yeah, so that's my personal belief. So thank you. As the talk come to the end, I just want to conclude the talk by sharing some resources with all of you. So like self-compassion is not like, okay, you listen to me today, then you will be able to love yourself. Because we are talking about like I'm 30 plus, I'm talking about my relationship with myself for the past 30 years. And it requires a lot of intentional efforts to practice as well. So to start with that, there are 3 books that I think you can kind of like invest in, because these 3 books, they actually give you evidence, scientific evidence of like, if you practice self-compassion, how would that help you? And then in these 3 books, they also have a very practical guide to guide you step by steps to slowly love yourself more and build a more loving and better relationship with yourself. So you may want to screenshot the pictures if you are interested. And then we will be moving on to the next slide. Yep. So if you are curious about, so just now when during the talk, you have done some self-reflection and you may be having some insights about your relationship with yourself. And if you want to confirm whether your introspection is kind of like correct, you can also do this like self-compassion test on this website. And I'm going to share with all of you on the chat box. Yep. And then, so this test is actually measures based on 3 domains, which are self-kindness, shared humanity, and mindfulness. So they will actually explain to you where you are on these 3 domains. And of course, as I mentioned, to some of the people, to tune into their feelings and thoughts is actually very scary because of their past hurts or trauma or past traumatic relationship. So perhaps if you have friends experience such experience, you can also refer them to a professional to talk to the counselor, because sometimes those very difficult feeling is also very hard for them to kind of like deal with. So to have someone to journey with, a counselor to journey with them, maybe they will they'll feel more supported and safer to also work through the issue and the past trauma. And these are some of the counseling centers that is funded by government, and you can approach these counseling centers. And next slide. And then now I'm going to sell Koyok for my colleagues, Carolyn. So Carolyn will be the last among 4 of us to talk about anxiety and interpersonal relationship. And in fact, her topic is also an extension of my topic. So after knowing about yourself, then how does yourself kind of like interplay in your relationship? So if you like to find out more, do tune in on 10th of March, same timing, 7:30 to 9 o'clock. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening in. And if you have any questions or further questions, feel free to contact our counseling center, and we will try our best to assist you. And thank you.
Thank you, Fion and Carolyn, and everyone who have participated actively tonight. We hope that you have learned and enjoyed the session as much as we did. Okay, so 2 weeks later, on the 10th of March, we will be having our final session for this series. So Carolyn will be sharing with us on anxiety and interpersonal relationships. So please join us for this session. We are thankful to be able to hear and receive tonight's teaching with no cost at all. If you are moved by our initiative to provide this mental wellness program, do support us by scanning the QR code on the screen with PayNow app, or visit our donor box page at donorbox.org/ENGSIBD. Please indicate self-care in the comment or reference column. Your feedback is important to us. Help us also to improve on our training programs by giving us your feedback through this QR code all the links shown on the screen right now. I will leave this page on as we say thank you and good night to one another. Okay.